And he's back. Bond.
Hello.
Bond-A-THON 2024 is here, kids. Welcome to Generation Movie on a Monday night. My name is JW Colwell. I am joined, as always, by my partner in crime, Drees, from FILMBUFF Online. How we doing? 003.5. I went with, like, Oddjob's kind of freaking cool. He's kind of cool. Yeah. So we're into Bond-A-THON 2024. I would love if we get a gift from the Bond gods, and during Bond-A-THON 2024, where we take a look at all of the Bonds and do one movie from each Bond for the next 5 weeks, all the way into the main movie going season. We're gonna do one Bond each. And we settled it up. It turns out we're going to do the third movie of each one. And the way that's worked out is because last year we did the first movie of each one. So we're going to be doing Goldfinger. We're going to do The Spy Who Loved Me. We're going to do License to Kill because Timothy Dalton doesn't have a third one. And that'll get us 2 Bonds out of the way that we don't have to worry about ever again. The World Is Not Enough, and then Skyfall for Brosnan and for Daniel Craig. And we're in the midst of what we're talking about to begin the show tonight. The active, picking a Bond actor, who's next, and also how's it going to go? Who's going to direct is kind of an important thing. Christopher Nolan has scratched himself off the list because Christopher Nolan is doing something that even I can get behind. Like, I'm not the huge Nolan fan, but Christopher Nolan is apparently working on The Prisoner, an update of the Patrick McGoohan show that was just, cult, amazing sci-fi / spy / horror. Like,
the original Prisoner is mind-bending in what it does in terms of episodic television, in terms of dealing with the Cold War, in terms of sheer brilliance.
And McGoohan is amazing. Never seen it.
You've not seen it?
No, I've seen it.
Oh,
if you've never seen it, you should actively search it out. Patrick McGoohan's great. He plays number 6. He's basically what we think is a spy, a super spy that's been captured by a Spectre-like organization, if we're talking in Bondian terms. And it was kind of a gift to McGoohan. McGoohan was up for the original Bonds, lost out, and then ended up doing this show that just became a cult show. Only has 13 episodes, like another cult show, Firefly. And it's one of those shows that inspires a cult following.
And it could be seen as a sequel series or not to another series that McGowan had done called Secret Agent, when, of course, we all know the Johnny Rivers tune, Secret Agent Man, was inspired by this show. And when he ended Secret Agent, he presented to ITV, I think it was, actually not BBC, but excuse me, an idea about what happens when a spy tries to retire.
Yes.
And is he captured by a foreign power, or is he being held by his own people? Or are they one and the same? Even that's some of the base questions of this
and of
series.
course it has the
Really
single greatest crazy sci-fi thing, which are giant bouncy balls. I like I can't explain how cool they are enough. When he tries to escape this little village he's put into, these balls follow him around, and it's just it's incredible. And there's always somebody there it's like a guest of the week of the guy that he gets fired every week or murdered, depending on how you want to look at it. Because in this little village, it's one and the same. If somebody loses their job, they don't end up doing well. But it's a great show, and if Nolan chooses to do The Prisoner, I think he's more in line with that than he would be with a Bond movie. Aaron Taylor Johnson is apparently majorly in the running. Sydney Sweeney is in the running, so much so that they've stopped taking bets on them. And the director is up in the air. We don't know who the director is. They've said they want Denis Villeneuve. He's busy. Yeah, he's apparently going to be making a third Dune movie. But again, all these people I would love to see do a Bond film. In my heart of hearts, I'd like to see Spielberg do a Bond film. I'd like Tim get a shot. I mean, he's doing Bullet,
but Spies, which is sort of a Bond film.
Not the same. Not the same.
I know.
But like I said, I think it's one of the best jobs in the business. It is. It only a certain number of people have played this role on the big screen, and few of them are regarded. We've had good runs from Pierce Brosnan had a bunch of good ones, but they're not great movies, right? So he kind of suffers from not having a bunch of great movies. He has one really good Bond, and then kind of three that are just like meh. They're okay. They're Bond. He's good in them, but they kind of fall short of the thing. Connery has the standalone next to Craig, the most successful Bonds, right? Where they're all kind of like, one after the other. They were, just getting the feel, starting to understand. And by Goldfinger, when we get to the third movie, we've this, in many ways, what we discussed later tonight, is the template by which other Bond films are judged. And then, while some Bond films go after the legend, right? They go after the idea that this is a carousing kind of like man whore. Because I Connery and Craig pair up so perfectly with their visions of the character, right? They're like diametrically opposed, visions of the character. And one is, considerably more, less misogynistic than the other, and
which, I mean, it's kind of strange to say that they're kind of diametrically opposed when I see, Connery and Craig both drawing a lot of their material in terms of the character, not so much story, from Fleming's original novels, but they're drawing different little bits.
Yeah, well, we get sent. I get sent an article by Ken McKernan. Let's say hi to people who are in the chat house tonight. Joe Ridgely, good evening, gentlemen. Great to have you back.
Hey, Joe.
Rich had a busy week. We're going to talk about Rich's Monday night last week. And then hello, brothers. Hello, Sean Smithson. And good evening, friends. Good evening, Ken McKernan. Thank you for the article he sent us earlier. There's apparently an Ian Fleming book coming out 2 days from now, right in the middle of BOND-A-THON. I can also imagine. Well,
there's a James Bond book coming out tomorrow, actually.
like an actual Bond book, like a Bond.
Like a novel?
Book?
No. This is on the franchise. Give me a second here, and I'll pull up the exact name for you.
Oh, I sent you an article. I sent you a link. It's
yeah, I'm not
called. It is called Ian Fleming, The Complete Man. It's coming out tomorrow.
Okay, that's not the book I was referring to.
Oh my God. Okay, so there's a lot of Bond this week. Maybe we will get the Bond announcement. There's a lot about what's the other Bond? There's another Bond book?
Give me a second. I want to make sure I get the
I will definitely put it in the hashtags next
week. Okay. That's why I was spelling wrong. Okay. A gentleman I know from Wilkes-Barre here has it's actually came out last week. Tom Shibolia, who wrote that great book about the 1966 television season. That was the first full season of television where all three networks were entirely in color. Great book. I would recommend checking that out. He has a new book out. It's called James Bond and the 60s Spy Craze. I'm hoping actually to get an interview with him lined up for the Big Picture podcast at some point in the very near future. But I was actually hanging out with him on Monday night at another event, and we were talking about that. So I'm very anxious to see.
Well, now I feel like we should try to get him on here too to talk about Bond. But we should do both. If we can do both, we should do both. But yeah, I mean, Bond is never out of popularity. Like, there's never. I mean, very few film characters have open sports books all over the world about them. And I think Aaron Taylor Johnson is an interesting choice. I don't think he's I would if I were them, I'd wait till Craven opens, but maybe get in before Craven opens because that movie's going to be terrible. But he seems like he's a good kid. Seems like he works hard. Seems like he's in shape. Has a look to him that's easy on the eyes, as the ladies would say. I would imagine. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I just think it's one of those the craze. The other book that's coming out this week. So we have that book coming out, but the book that Ken let us know about tonight is basically it's all about Ian Fleming. It's an Ian Fleming, The Complete Man. And then basically it's by Nicholas Shakespeare, and it's a biography of Bond author Ian Fleming. So it goes into all of the things that went into it. Has a lot of behind the scenes stuff of Fleming trying to get the character to the big screen. And the article that Ken sent us was that Lashana Lynch was not the original, the first thought for a woman to be 007. That Gregory Radoff, one of the producers, had floated Susan Hayward to be like a lady Bond because they thought the character, and I quote, was so ridiculous that in the 60s it would have to be a woman. Which we thought Bond was kind of unbelievable, as I recall, even kind of stupid. So Gregory thought the solution was to make Bond a woman, Jane Bond, if you will. And I think that's just hilarious. The article goes on from Variety to basically talk a little bit about how much Ian Fleming didn't like, and it's part of the folklore. Ian Fleming didn't particularly like Sean Connery. Wanted Richard Burton. But by the third movie here. They are kind of, as we say in the business, stuck. Because Dr. No does well, From Russia with Love does well, and then Goldfinger, by the time we get around to the third movie, would you say it's a gangbusters kind of thing? I mean, I was looking at the numbers today, Rich. It's it's an astonishing number that we're going to talk about near the end of the show.
Yeah, this is where the franchise hits critical mass, and not just in terms of popularity, because yeah, I mean we still have Thunderball ahead, which I think even peaks probably a little bit past this. But I think in terms of it figuring out what it needs to be as a movie franchise, Dr. No is kind of very. I mean, okay, we're dealing with nuclear missiles or something, but it feels very small and small stakes. Even though, yes, we go to, and then From Russia with Love feels a little bit bigger. They start to get into spycraft a little bit more. Some of the more trickier things, tricked out, little devices and stuff like that. But here, I think, is really where they really start to hit their stride. We've got the Aston Martin coming in. We've got Goldfinger's laser thing where he's going to cauterize Bond's dick off. And, we're starting to get just the right amount.
Wait a second. I was thinking about you talking about stuff that I know. I was like, I need to make sure that when he talks about some things, we have pictures. And then, again, as we get into this movie, the template, this is the template by which all other Bond films are kind of like, how good is the villain? How good is the plot? How good, it's almost different from anything we do in Generation Movie. How good is the villain? How good is the plot to overthrow the world or whatever the fuck they're going to do? How good are the henchmen? Right? We're going to get into this. The movie next week we're going to do is this movie. And when we talk henchmen, kids, we're going to get into, I'm going to say, I love ODDJOB. I think ODDJOB's great. He's great at playing GoldenEye. He's great. But my henchman growing up was Jaws. I love Jaws.
The only henchman they bring back for a second movie.
That's what I mean. He's the only one that other villains hire to go after Bond. It's kind of ridiculous. But anyway, so
which I think is to Moonraker's detriment, actually, that Jaws comes back for that second film. But there's a lot of things that go to Moonraker's detriment. But we'll talk about that next week.
But Jaws and the giant clown outfit's amazing. I mean, I'm just saying, you're making fun of Moonraker, but I'm just going to say to you, Jaws and the giant clown outfit fucking rules in Carnival. Anyway, but that's not on Smorgasbord tonight. Tonight we get a villain. We get a main villain for a real, not that Robert Shaw wasn't a good villain, but this is a villain. This Auric Goldfinger, he's a fetishist. He's got a ton of money. He's the first billionaire Bond villain, right? Dr. No probably had some scratch, but he doesn't have Auric Goldfinger scratch. We get ODDJOB, this dude, he's crushing golf balls and cutting the heads off of, statues and shit. We get, as you said, the Aston Martin. This is the template. We need cool shit. We need it immediately. And we need it, we need Bond to be and also, I should say, one of the main template pieces that we haven't talked about for a moment. This is the first Bond movie that starts in the middle of a Bond adventure. Right?
Yes.
So that this
another iconic, classical trope of a Bond film
is that he's finishing something off and moving into the next thing. Also, one of the things that this movie kind of also does, and we're going to talk about it in a moment, is in production, they make I was reading about it, right? They did so well with Dr. No and From Russia with Love, and they had so many things set up to try to be able to move the next pace along. And on Her Majesty's Secret Service was one of the scripts that they were dying to do. Of course, it will end up becoming George Lazenby's only Bond, and widely regarded now as not one of the worst Bonds, but now one of the best Bonds as time has passed. We went over it last year. But on Her Majesty's Secret Service proved far too hard to shoot. So they started going through. Thunderball wasn't ready. Her Majesty's Secret Service, they had the really difficult idea of having to shoot in the Swiss Alps. So then they moved Goldfinger right up the list, which is an amazing story because it ends up checking all the boxes. Like, I think that's an incredible thing. Also, this is the first time we're going to have Sean Connery actively fighting about money.
Not the last time.
Not the last time, but this is the first time because he got injured on the set, and then he, basically felt he wasn't being paid enough, and wanted gross profit points. Which,
well, Connery wasn't the only one who was making monetary demands on the producers. The reason we don't have Jack Lord back as Felix Leiter, CIA agent, is because Lord wanted a bigger bump in salary, and he wanted co-billing with Sean Connery. And the producers were just like, "No, we can do without you." And that kind of set the precedent of virtually a new person playing Felix
Leiter as well. Well, and
up.
also, speaking of other people who want money behind the scenes, right? One of the reasons we don't have a director we know and love from the first two. Terrence Young, who directed the first two movies, basically gets into a fight dispute about being denied the film's percentage of the profits. He ends up making The Amorous Adventures of Moll Flanders. And then Broccoli and Saltzman move over to Guy Hamilton, right? So Guy Hamilton, who basically turned down directing Dr. No because he didn't like how Bond was being portrayed as superhuman, but he gets a chance here, and he basically says, if we make, and it's crucial that he's directing this movie, if we make Bond superhuman, the villains have to be an actual higher threat level, right? The writing behind it has to have, so instead of a guy doing nuclear tests in the Caribbean, or a very dangerous Russian spy on that Bond is matching wits with, we get the first plot. We get the first, I have world ambitions. I'm a billionaire. I'm dangerous. And that all comes from Guy Hamilton's thought that if Bond is superhuman, it's like Batman. Batman is only as good as the villains. So, and to have this director say that's how we have to do it, kind of amazing. Richard Maibaum, who co-wrote the previous film, he comes back, and he is there. Part of the novel, I guess, that he changed was that Goldfinger tries to in the novel, Goldfinger tries to empty Fort Knox, which was a huge, they even explain it away. Bond at one point in this movie explains it away by just basically going, yeah, all these bars weigh a certain amount, and you need weeks to empty it out. So they change it. It becomes a global plan to irradiate with a dirty bomb the United States gold reserve at Fort Knox. Kind of brilliant. You take a plot weakness and turn it into a plot, ace. Because to be honest, it doesn't, when you first hear it, you're like, that sounds stupid. But then you realize Goldfinger has gold stored all over the world. And the less gold there is in it, he, brings his thing up, his boat rises. Also, the people behind this are the Chinese, who are basically giving him a dirty bomb to do it so they can watch the world burn chaotically in the West. And it all comes together it's a really good script. And then,
Mm-hmm.
then they just, all they have to do is cast, and they cast, like, I, you read the story, they cast, the amazing, I want to make sure I say his name right. It's Gert Frobe, right? Gert Frobe? Frobe? Frobe?
I've always pronounced it Frobe.
Frobe. Gert Frobe as Goldfinger. The problem was how, unfortunately, the problem for casting him, however, was slight problem. Didn't speak English well. Was a German actor that only spoke German and
Mm-hmm.
had to phonetically learn his lines, and then
And they still
eventually
redubbed him with an actor by the name of Michael Collins.
yes, and actually, in rewatching it today, Rich, it's not noticeable. It's it's shockingly not. Usually with dubbing stuff, you and I have both watched badly dubbed films. This is one of the greatest dub films I've ever seen,
Mm-hmm.
because he has a lot of dialogue. He has, like, it's not like a fucking joke. And even, like, I guess they walked him through the first, like, doing the original takes, and then they tried to redub his voice, and that didn't work, and then they finally had to bring on this other actor. But that's one of the speed bumps that happens um, during bringing this, you know, forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other casting is kind of, like, amazing. The Odd Job casting, ends up becoming one of the greatest Bond villains of all time, with very little screen time, and basically because, and also, again, for his chores behind the scenes as well. Um, the actor playing Odd Job, Harold Sakata, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, was also badly burned doing the stunt at the end, although you couldn't tell that anything happened to him, and also he didn't give up during the take. He apparently got very burned during, so weird shit on this particular Bond behind the scenes, right? Can't get
Yeah.
a director, have to go to the second guy, the guy that's been working on them but isn't first pick, because they're fighting over money. Connery starts fighting over money, and then they get an actor who they really like, and they put into everything, and then he can't speak English. Which, these are weird, weird things. And that's about it. It shoots, when they're doing the filming, it really quick. January 1964, and they're finished. I think it's 3 months. They bang it out. Like, it's not like a Bond movie now where we're talking, years between Bond filming starting and Bond finally coming out, right? I think that's interesting, because as the budgets get bigger and as things get more bloated, um, for Bond in general, the time to film a Bond takes much longer than here. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's weird. It's a weird little peccadillo. Like, kind of, the more money they make and the more budget they use, the longer the time frame gets between films.
But at this point, though, they're on their third movie. They know what they're doing in terms of production, utilizing their resources, getting a second unit out there shooting, stunt work and stuff like that, and some of the action sequences. I mean, they barely shot in Miami for the opening part of the main part of the movie. So much so that there's a few shots that really look like, it's just the actor is in front of a rear
A green
projection
screen.
of the hotel. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
which is a
I
little,
mean,
but what
there's
can you do?
there's whole swaths of the film that looks like it's just Connery. There's a car chase in the middle, when he goes to Goldfinger's factory, and all these Chinese actors are, like, They look like they're just kind of on a big screen, and he's just kind of turning the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It I'm not saying it looks bad. I'm just saying, as we progress in this franchise, everything's going to be on location. Everything's going to be real. The stunts are going to be like it. This movie gives it the template, and then everything else that follows is you know what I mean, like just crazy. Actually, I lied. It's January to July, so 7 months actually. Holy shit, 7 months filming. Just off the top of my head, sorry. And then they also get to film around Fort Knox, which
Not a lot of people do.
not a lot of people do. Um, you know what I mean? Like, and not a lot of people get to fly over. Because the plot calls for a nerve gas toxin that's delivered by Pussy Galore and her flying angels. So, but a lot of filming behind the scenes with the military was not like, why are we putting all out for this franchise that isn't an American, that sort of thing. Kind of loomed its head a little bit. Guy Hamilton had a tough time. They were allowed to film, but then they had to fight to be able to. You know what I mean? They could never go inside, obviously, inside the depository, and they because nobody knows the secrets of what happens in Fort Knox. And then all sets, of course, are made in Pinewood Studios. But they had no idea what they were making. And so Ken Adams' interpretation is, the idea of giant gold ingots just sitting behind iron bars is one of his great, like Ken Adams, out of his imagination comes gold, literally. You know what I mean? But even so I think the effects are also something that has to be talked about. This is one of the where they everything kind of comes to play with the Aston Martin. This is the Bond car of Bond cars.
I mean, there's some other things that come into play too here. I would say almost unfortunately, this is the first movie where not one but two women who become romantically involved with Bond wind up, in a body bag by the end of the film. Both Mastersons.
Not by the end. Not by the end. 30 minutes in.
Yeah, 30 minutes in for one, and then her sister later on doesn't, make it all the way through either. But
she's a bad job.
Yeah.
Well, but I think the misogyny is an interesting aspect of this production. It's because it's made in '64. It's not even afterthought. But as we progress to 2024, you and I are going to talk about this in a moment. It's an odd world because you can love Bond and still man talk time might be something where you go, holy fuck, how did that make it into the script? And then
I was going to say, the Masterson sisters getting murdered, each of them getting murdered is maybe the least of the misogyny here. We've got, later Dink man talk and the patronizing slap on the ass as she leaves. And also you've got the idea that Bond basically rapes the lesbian Pussy Galore into being straight and a good guy in that hayloft. And he's such a good guy in the sack that she gives up her entire sexuality.
It's a literal role in
which honestly is like horrific. It's a horrific idea. Yes. But I still like this movie a lot. So I mean, I think we can engage with these horrible things that are in it on a certain level, but still, overall admire the overall work. And that's, I think, when you sometimes bring up these types of criticisms, some Bond fans will instinctively oh, you hate this movie, how dare you, you know, it was a different time. Of course it's a different time, and hopefully we're better people now. But, you know, to not
I don't know.
acknowledge that is also a bad idea.
I don't know if we're better people, Rich.
Well, we're trying to be. Some of us are trying to be.
with all the eclipse stuff today. I don't know. I don't know anymore.
You weren't at the child sacrifice later earlier
and
during the eclipse?
I was early. I was early.
I brought the covered casserole dish.
I
So,
got
you know.
in. I got in. I dropped my peach cobbler on the table, and you know, threw the kid to Bahamut, and then went merrily on my way. Yeah, Jaws was an awesome character. Yeah, he was. Next week, introduction, Richard Kiel as Jaws. Oh, I can't wait. That Austin Martin car is absolutely beautiful. It is. There will be Bond cars. There will be other Bond cars, but nothing replicates this Austin Martin careening down hills, following cars. It just, and the gun chase. It also has, with regards to the Austin Martin, it is also fully fucking jacked for a spy movie. And I'm going to say this point blank when we talk about, legacy. If you don't think the Aston Martin, whoever made the game Spy Hunter, if you don't think that was had something to do with watching Goldfinger, the cars that have the little wheels that come out, oil slick, the smoke screen, eventually the rockets, just unbelievable. And another one, I'm going to show a picture. I'll give you a picture of something. Unfortunately, started advertising for DB7 Heineken beer in later years, but the last two movies, they did stop that, thankfully. Yeah, Bond, with regards to marketing, that's a great thing. This is the first Bond movie that has toys, right? The Aston Martin is a childhood toy that came out, and had all the cool things. Marketing campaign began as soon as filming started in Florida. At the 1964 New York World's Club Fair, was dubbed the most famous car in the world, and consequently, the sales of the car rose because of it. Corgi Toys, who've been working with Bond since the beginning, it was one of the best-selling toys of 1964. Obviously, we've also had other licensing, clothing, dress and attire, action figures, all kinds of stuff, board games, jigsaw puzzles, all kinds of shit, lunch boxes, and trading cards, of which I have an entire set of the black and white cards
nice.
in my possession. Yes, my dad had them. So, but yeah, I mean, it is a gorgeous car. And like I said, everything comes in, like, the interesting thing here, like you said, Rich, this is the template. This is how we get going. This is, we're going to have this. It's going to be the prologue that we're going to get used to. It's going to be, the Bond thing going across the screen. It's going to be a great villain, world domination plot, right? Something bigger than just killing Bond or killing, you know what I mean? Like, it becomes a template for everything.
When I interviewed Raymond Benson, who authored a few of the Bond novels, continuation novels back in the 90s, I interviewed him for the Times Leader a billion years ago for one. I think when he was taking over the thing. The one thing I remember him saying is Bond doesn't necessarily have to exist in the Cold War, which, I sort of, have always felt that that's where he works best, as long as he's dealing with something that affects England. Primarily. And yeah, somebody jacking up the entire world economy definitely would affect England. So that's why that works here. And
they have a great little scene at the beginning where M takes him to dinner with like a British banker. And he's like, look, I don't know what you know about gold, but gold fucks everything up if something goes wrong. And Bond's like, okay. And then he gives him a German Nazi gold bar. It's like, that's what Britain's hiding? Jesus Christ. We got him out of the lake, whatever. It's like, what the fuck? But the production goes well. I mean, except for a few bumps, Connery getting a little bit hurt and, Gert Frobe not being able to speak. It's like, which is odd. He also, the reason they liked him, he, I guess, was in some German movie that was about that was a dark themed, sexual predator kind of movie, and they liked his look as different from Robert Shaw and different from Dr. No. He's like the first. He's also like, he's chubby. Like, he's not a threat to Bond physically.
No, he's not.
Right. I mean, ODDJOB is, but that's the first, like, Rosa Klebb wasn't necessarily working for Robert Shaw. You know what I mean? Like, it's this whole thing. They were working together, but not necessarily, so there's so many pieces of the template in this movie. If you watch it, if you watch it and you end up liking it, there's a lot of Bonds that have the same template that aren't necessarily as well done. But, the template, for me over time, the template is what's made me feel Bondy. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, and that's, kind of how we judge things. Box office. Rich, the numbers are astounding. And these are, I need to put this in perspective. These are 1964 numbers. Budget, $3 million. Just so we're clear, this is 1964. $3 million is a lot of fucking money, Rich. It is. It is double the amount of money. It's Dr. No and From Russia with Love budget combined, right? So it's a lot of money, but it's okay because this movie, again, kind of taking the global, looking whatever, it grosses $51 million in the United States and $73 million internationally, for a worldwide box office total in 1964 of $124 million. Now, for the kids at home, probably close to $1 billion movie now, like $700 or $800 million. But there were so many tickets sold. This is one of the biggest movies of the year. It dominates everything. It dominates pop culture. It's in a, becomes a British superhero, becomes America's favorite superhero, one of America's favorite superheroes. And certainly the biggest, like, as we progress through the Connery Bonds, the budgets get bigger. Thunderball is the one that does best out of all the Bonds he has, right? This one is the one where they launched the franchise. But that's an astounding number. To put it in perspective, and again, we use the number site really well. It's a great little site where you can just kind of go wonky. The domestic share
filters for data that we're looking at.
It is perfect, coolly fun data that we're looking at. It's just so we're clear, the budget and the movie makes 41 times its budget. Can you imagine any movie we talk about, or any movie in the last 40 years since you and I have been in this movie obsession phase of our lives, right? Can you imagine any movie we've ever seen making 40 times its budget? It just, like, holy fuck, like, put in perspective, like, 40 times its budget for, like, Dune would be $8 billion. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy numbers. It's so old, but also the only way to make it relatable is, you look at something like Godzilla Kong, 40 times its budget would be like $4 billion. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, and movies aren't doing that. So this movie, a certain time, a certain place, becomes a certain obsession, becomes, the most talked about franchise for a long time, to be honest. It becomes, widely regarded as, probably until 77, right? The most profitable franchise of all time until 77 starts the madness that you and I would call Star Wars.
Yes.
A room full of toys, and on a podcast with a good friend who also has a room with like toys. It just. But Bond is the first to do it. Bond is even Star Wars movies didn't do 40 times their budget. You know what I mean? Like, actually, like I was thinking about it now. Like, what the only movie in our lifetime that might have done 40 times its budget, maybe Halloween, 78 Halloween.
Blair Witch Project, maybe.
Blair Witch was the other one. That's the other one I was just thinking of.
Yeah.
But those are the two. That's 40. Like, because Blair Witch, I think, or maybe Paranormal Activity too. Because that was shoestring as well, and that, one nice screening from Steven Spielberg, and the world is making Paranormal Activity movies until we're blue in the face. But the box office is astounding, and it's also just something where you can't. I can't even put into words the amount of money in '64 it made. Just crushed everything, like brutal. Critical response then and now. So, as you know, we use the aggregate. We use Rotten Tomatoes just to give an idea. The Rotten Tomato meter on this movie is 99%.
Not surprising.
With an audience score of 89. It is one of the Bonds that is the template. It is by which it has a good song, it has a good villain, it has a good henchman, has a good car, has certain beautiful women with very sexual names. It has a girl being painted gold and murdered. Like it has everything. The 99% is interesting though. That's again 99 on Rotten Tomatoes is like that means 1% of of thousands of reviews.
I was going to say, did they give you a number for the review? I don't have it pulled up here.
It is 99% with 72 reviews. Audience is over 100,000 and 89.
Okay, so that's 72 reviews, and it's a 90. So one person out of 72 didn't like it.
Yeah, it's that's brutal. But one of the things that Rich and I, in discussing doing Bonds and doing eras and doing whatever, I do agree with Rich, and I will say this: some of the misogyny is off-putting. Some of it isn't great. The hayloft isn't great. Every time a girl tends to like either break away from Goldfinger or try to kill Goldfinger or whatever, they get murdered.
This is not the first time I've ever talked in public about this movie. Back in 2017, 2015, I think it was, I did a series called the James Bond Double Feature, where I tracked Bond movies from their start all the way up to Spectre, because there's 24 Bond films, including the wonky Casino Royale. And I was able to kind of like pair them up two at a time. And so that was like the first time I was like, this is a little worrisome. It's a little misogynistic. It's unfortunate.
Some of the little rapey.
Yeah, a little rape. And then a couple years back when Natasha and I did we covered this Bond as a retro review on the Big Picture podcast, and she had never seen it before. So we sat down together to watch it, and we weren't 10 minutes in when we get to later man talk, and she bolted upright and was like, "Wait, what?" Which I kind of had a feeling that was going to be her reaction to that, and then we talked about it on the show and everything. So yeah, it's
I can't imagine Natasha being upset about misogyny. I am shocked. No, I'm not. She's too strong a female to deal with it. And but the other thing is that the rest of the movie is so fucking good, Rich. Like the rest of the movie, it's problematic, but it's like one of those movies where you're just like, everything clicks. Like the fucking, like I was trying to go through it. Like I was trying to get pictures of things I just love. Like this suit jacket. This is what he wears at the beginning. He also has one of the greatest like, I'm gonna say it right now. It is the single greatest line delivery in a glib action movie fashion ever. You know, there's a thug upstairs trying to romance the skimpy dancer at the beginning of the movie in the first mission, and she's got a guy in her room, and he tries to hit him, and they have a big fight. It's a pretty good fight, actually well staged, like for the '60s, pretty well done. You know, there's grabbing of legs, like an actual real like, hey, I might not get out of this, so I'm gonna do whatever I can to fuck you up. And he throws him in the pool, throws him in the bath that she's drawn. Um, After she has gotten clubbed in the head because Bond spun her around and the guy whacked her another girl getting whacked about the head. And throws the fan in, and it's shocking. Just shocking. Just delivers the line, puts his gun holster back on, and walks out the fucking door. And
I will say that fight does have one other trope about the early Connery Bond films. I think we kind of lost it by the time we hit Roger Moore. Because I don't remember it really, except for maybe one instance in Live and Let Die, where they undercrank the camera just a little bit to speed up some of the action in the fight scenes.
So it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, it stands out to me in From Russia with Love in the train compartment fight. Even when we have Bond, right at the beginning of the film in his wetsuit with the little duck on his head, when he pulls it off and tosses it back, boom, that feels like it's like they cut every other frame out of the shot, out of the sequence, just to make it move a whole lot faster. It's to my eye, it's very distracting. And I'm like, it's pretty cool. You don't need to speed up these fights to make it seem even cooler. I mean, if they go at the regular speed,
it's already going well. Right, you're right.
Physicality of it, you're kind of dispelling the illusion.
But what I would say to that is, when you're looking at these movies, so different with regards to how stunts and fight coordinators are how far we've come, right? So now it's something that was done in westerns and all throughout film history, and then at some point it got to the point where we just don't need it, right? And here it's noticeable, but it is nice. I love the suit jacket. We're going to talk about Legacy in a moment, because I think a movie that I love completely steals from this opening sequence, and I hadn't seen Goldfinger in a while, and now I'm like, holy fuck. It also has this sequence, which is widely regarded for its although he doesn't really monologue, right? He gets, Goldfinger doesn't monologue so much as, basically tell him how cool his laser is, right? And then it's the inevitable, you expect me to talk, Goldfinger? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Which is classic. And then, I can't say enough, like, how different the actors are, and what a jarring thing for Bond to be nervous about around Goldfinger, right? He's just a chubby guy that cheats at cards. He's trying to irradiate some gold. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I will say, I think the action sequences work pretty well. And again, to me, this is a grand scheme. I'm going to get a dirty bomb, which, by the way, think about the concept of dirty bombs and how that's really a now concept. That's a concept.
Yes.
Future. This is the Bond villain that has ideas about, like, well, if the dirty bomb doesn't go off and irradiate all the gold, it could go off somewhere else. They don't care where it goes off. I want it to go off where I want it to go off. So if you kind of I like that he's thinking. He is a thinking villain, right? He is. Now he lets Bond stay alive too long, but he is a pretty genius villain with, even when the sequence that I particularly love, it's the only time you can actually hear Gert Frobe's actual voice. There's a sequence with a bunch of mafiosa, like a bunch of like, you know, the mob from various cities, and he basically goes over the plan and basically, hey, just so you know, all that shit that you've been like, I told you you're going to get $1 million, you're going to get $1 million, but if you stay with me a little bit longer, you're going to get 10, right? And they're all like, very Italian in 1960s movies, and it's just
do you
it's
know
a
who's
great
in that
scene.
group? Do you know who's in that group of Italian or worldwide swarthy European non-discriminatory crime bosses?
I
Gary Marshall, future
Gary,
creator of Happy Days.
that's
Yes,
amazing.
Gary
That's
Marshall is one of those
incredible.
guys in there.
Who would have thought that Gary Marshall could be a mafiosa? But that's what I mean. But that sequence works so well. Like Goldfinger going through, like your sneaking people across the Mexican border allowed me to do this, and your dock worker allowed me to bring in this highly sensitive nerve gas. Like holy fuck. And then you cut to today, where we're talking about people crossing the border. We're constantly, because that's the new big threat, and we're also talking about dirty bombs and what this movie is very ahead of its time for 1964. I mean, I was amazed when I heard the word dirty bomb, and it's like, then they go into exactly what's in the dirty bomb, and Bond's like, holy shit, okay, this is fucking real now. Like, it's the first time Bond on screen is like actually concerned. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to be said for a hero being worried. You know what I mean? Like, and again, I think that goes back to Guy Hamilton saying, if you have Superman, you gotta have a villain. You gotta have somebody that can punch back. You know what I mean? And everything about it, like the henchman, ODDJOB, stupendous. Doesn't talk, just grunts.
Mm-hmm.
Just and is like got the cool outfit, has the amazing hat, kills the one girl, like kills Jill. It was Jill's sister, Thule. Is it Thule? Kills her from
Uh,
across the fucking, like, throws the hat at her and just bonks her in the skull, and then they just pick her up and take her away. Um, Also has good plans about like getting
Tilly.
gold bullion, Tilly, getting
Yeah,
gold
Jill.
bullion out of countries, right? The whole thing, like he is a master. Like for a Bond villain, he's got a good plan. That goes a long way, don't you think? For Bond movies,
I would say so. Yeah.
the villains need to be. I don't know. I just think it's one of those things where sometimes we have Bond villains, and we're to get some in this run of Bond-A-THON, where we just go, okay, that's not good enough. That's not a good enough plan. Now that we've had, now we have Goldfinger. Now we get, uh, although we will get one that is equal to Goldfinger late,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because Javier Bardem is going to come in and kind of reestablish what a Bond villain is, or what he could
Mm-hmm.
be, and even like, even question Bond's sexuality. So, um, I just think it checks all the boxes. It does have some questionable material where you go, I don't know, I don't want anybody to get hit in the ass and be like man talk. I think that's gets us into trouble when we don't need to get into trouble, right? For liking and even for liking something like that, where you're like, if your wife walks in while you're watching this and that happens, you might get a stern looking from your wife, or you might get
Yeah.
a stern looking from your loved one or a sister or whatever, and it's like, fuck. And some people might watch it and go, "Oh, the world was a better place," and I don't think it was, but the movie's great, and
Yeah.
it's got so much going for it. Fort Knox plan is amazing. Um, I still don't know why they don't just kill him. You know what I mean? Like there's a whole piece of me that's like, just fucking murder him. Just I know the idea is like Bond is like, oh, if I don't check in, somebody's gonna check on me. They'll send somebody else. It's like, the plans tomorrow.
Yeah,
Fuck
how
off.
how quickly
Oof.
did they get that turned around?
Yeah, exactly. Um, let's see. We got some comments. Ken writes, pornography made 12,000 times its $15,000 budget. Fun. See, I was those are the three I was thinking of: Halloween, Blair Witch Project, and Paranormal Activity. But anyway, but that's the other thing. I do think 89 is remarkably high on Rotten Tomatoes for the audience. That's a lot of people seeing it. It's over 100,000 people seeing it. So if you are looking for a Bond for like somebody like Joe who doesn't watch the Bond movies, and he should. He should. He's only 25 movies behind. But this is a perfect place to get them. And again, the template by which all other Bond movies are made. That brings us to the next component: legacy and franchise viability. Obviously, again,
one other thing we missed. The actor who plays Mr. Lin, who is basically the representative of the
People's Republic of China,
the unnamed communist Chinese who are financing Goldfinger's operation here. Burt Kwok, just a few months away from actually kind of exploding into his fame as Kato in A Shot in the Dark, the second Pink Panther movie. And that's the role everybody will remember him for, not for this or for the other Bond movie that he pops up in. But this is like one of his early roles, so it's always nice to kind of tip your hat to somebody who is going to be in another big franchise of the 60s and 70s.
Also, it is a good tip of the hat. Also, I do want to say, aside from the misogyny, and there is a little bit, just a tinge, mind you, and I don't bring it up lightly, but there's a tinge of Chinese racism, just a little bit. They all wear the same clothing. It looks weird. Everybody, like, not a single person, except for the one guy, except for Ling, wears anything different, and his is Kim Jong Unish in gray. He looks actually a little bit like Dr. No as well.
I mean, Cold War. The U.S. and the British are obviously trying to outmaneuver the Chinese. So part of that is the propaganda arm, the same as it was in World War II when all the Huns were dirty, all the Germans were dirty guns. And,
all I'm saying is, if we're looking at the misogyny, a little bit look at the racism, and just again, it's how they're dressed. It's not necessarily how they act. It's how they're dressed in the little blue cutoffs with the white socks and the almost open-toed shoes, but they're, you know what I mean, like they're shaped to the foot. It's noticeable. It's something you might see in like kung fu movies from the era. So it's just one of those things. Legacy and franchise viability. I mean, everything kind of rides on this movie, because this is the template. This is where we get everything that Bond will be. We get, the mission before. We get the beautiful women. We get a villain with an actual master plan. We get a henchman that's larger than life.
This is the first Bond movie. Remember the first two Bond movies of Dr. No and From Russia with Love? We were introduced to Bond's steady girlfriend back home. And she is long gone by this point.
We know, and like I said, this is them getting their footing, like you said earlier, right? It's
everything.
Them getting their full footing, and
set right here,
and everything. And then you start thinking about it as it trickles down. Like, not only are we in one of the most lucrative franchises of all time, not only will Connery have 3 more Bond movies, right? Not only will other actors take on Bond, and just it profligates out of control in some ways. But it also, and this is where the picture comes in, and I didn't think anything of it until I saw this, and then I started I was thinking about that particular that suit and the idea that it starts with a wetsuit and then it becomes that suit.
Hmm.
And I couldn't help but think about True Lies, one of my favorite movies. Like just the idea that True Lies starts with the same wetsuit and the same goddamn, white tux. And you know what I mean? Like, and, I just think it's one of those things where you look at it and you go, holy shit. And that tux is incredible. And then you look at the tux that is also on display and say, this movie, hold on. Boom. No red tie, no red carnation. But I
And
think
remember too, when Triple X came out, what's that first sequence? It's a suave British secret agent in a tuxedo, and he gets killed, which is the Bond image had become so
ingrained.
part of the zeitgeist, so ingrained, so calcified even, that if you're trying to make a movie that says we're going to be different from this franchise, we're going to be a new kind of
You have to murder
spy
it.
film, you have to put a bullet in the head, quite literally, of the old paradigm, and which I think is probably the best thing that Triple X does. And then the rest of the movie
And
doesn't work for me as much, but I respect that they were planting their
they
flags.
knew.
So
And like I said, I think, the idea that in 94 True Lies comes out and they don't ape the front, but it's he comes out in a wetsuit, he has the same goggle thing on, except it's not a bird. He's in the ice,
Mhm.
he gets out and he has the white tux. I was thinking about it today. I was thinking about that, and I was playing Spy Hunter on my Xbox. And I was like driving around. I was like dropping oil, dropping the smoke screen, baby, boom.
Mm.
And then also like the bad guy cars have the little things that come out of the tires, like the whole fucking game. You know what I mean? They have people shooting out of the car at you, and like even the sequences there, like the idea that this movie, this Goldfinger movie, actually kind of sets the roots and just branches out to all forms of spy films. And when we start getting the Matt Helm movies, we get in like Flint movies. You know what I mean? Like we get a bunch of other 60s versions of trying to make trying to do it. So you can't. It's one of the most important films in film history. Like
Oh yeah.
it's not like a great big, although it is the first time it gets nominated for an Academy Award. It isn't a great big Oscar winner or a movie that but it is a movie that creates a tried and true formula and is able to just make it amazing.
Hmm.
And it sticks into a lot of most of the Bond movies that people end up loving all have the same qualities as Goldfinger. And that's why you're going to hear it on a lot of like, well, what's the best Bond? You're going to hear on Her Majesty's Secret Service. You're going to hear Goldfinger. You're going to hear Skyfall, which we're going to get to this year during BOND-A-THON. And it just the character is just look at all these men that have played it. Look at all of them, and just realize it's one of the most sought after roles. It will change an actor's life. And it's something like, and it's also something where it's like an Academy Award winner thing, right? Where you will forever be James Bond, 007.
Yes, that's the
So
first line of your obit, no matter what. You cure
no matter what,
cancer, it's gonna be so and so who played James Bond from blah 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 to blah blah blah, who
cured
also
cancer.
cured cancer.
Yes. So James Bond is back, 007. We will return next week. We're gonna, we with this. This is the third. Oh, that's Goldfinger. Sorry. We will be back next week with this one. As we're wrapping up, this one also has a cool car. This one also has a cool henchman. This one also has a very 70s cool Bond girl. So, The Spy Who Loved Me, Roger Moore's third effort at playing the super spy. And for a lot of people, right, including myself, was the Bond I grew up with. And then I've had the pleasure of living through the Brosnan, Dalton, Craig era, but I grew up on Roger Moore Bond movies, and then, of course, eventually was shown Bond movies from, with, watching the originals with Connery.
Mm-hmm.
But, and then you develop, like, as you watch so many Bond films, you eventually, well, I like how that one does this, and I like how this one does, I like how the character changes over time, and I like, it becomes like a ranking, an immediate nerd ranking system that is incredible with Bond.
That's kind of the genius, the unintended genius of this franchise, is that it can kind of reinvent itself, not just with a recasting, but as the global politics kind of change and morph. The character himself, again, it's just what is
what's going on in the world,
what impacts Britain, and what would they want to go ahead and take care of. And so that's in the 60s it was the Cold War. In after the Cold War ended in the 80s, then what? It was like, okay, maybe there was what was going on in
sociopaths. Moore has a lot of rampant sociopaths who happen to have a lot of money, which is again a trend that never dies and is currently ongoing in the situation we all find ourselves in the country. Anyway, anywho,
I think that's more of a case of, at the time, maybe the producers not wanting to engage in a lot of real world politic. So we'll get our drafts.
No, I agree. It's real easy. It's real easy to figure out that, when we get to Christopher Walken in A View to a Kill, that he's just a weirdo. He's a fucking rich weirdo. Drax in Moonraker is a fucking crazy rich weirdo. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, yes. So Moore gets a lot of rich weirdos. Connery gets grand schemes. Moore gets rich weirdos that may or may not have ideas on how to do things. But we're going to talk about all of them. Again, we're doing Goldfinger, The Spy Who Loved Me, License to Kill, underrated Timothy Dalton Bond. Yep. The World Is Not Enough, and Skyfall. And Dalton only got 2 Bonds, but License to Kill is interesting because, again, it's Bond in a different mode. It's Bond as seeking revenge. So, when we get to them, it should be an interesting watch, and it's a good time. Let's see. I may have missed it over BOND-A-THON. Did the Shaken Not Stirred start in this flick? Yes. I don't know if it started in this flick.
I think that goes all the way back to Dr.
That goes to Dr. No. But this one it's he definitely says it in this one. You know what I mean? Like vodka martini shaken not stirred. He also at some point he has a mint julep where he basically tells the guy, let's not make it too sweet. I'm good. Mm-hmm. I don't need a lot of mint. Just bring me the booze while I talk with your crazy gold obsessed boss. Okay, Rich. Where can people find you, and what do you got going on? Also, what happened last week? You weren't here last week. You went to a big thing.
Yeah, quickly. Last week I was in New York City for the world premiere of the documentary Drew Friedman, Vermeer of the Borscht Belt. Drew Friedman is a comic illustrator, a cartoonist. His work has been seen in everything from like Spy magazine to the covers of Scream magazine. He does a lot of that pixelation style art. He's very photorealistic in his caricatures of famous people in show business, things like that. If you've seen his work, you'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I know this guy. This was directed by a friend of mine, Kevin Doherty. He had started this project back in 2017 and just finished it now. It's great. There was a really fun Q&A afterwards with Kevin and Drew Friedman, Frank Santopadre, who was the co-host of the Gilbert Godfrey Amazing Colossal podcast, Craig Bierko, Richard Kind was there, a couple of other people, and it was a great because it kind of devolved into just like a general discussion about a lot of the idea of Jewish humor, comedy in New York, some racy jokes, and it was a great time. I'm not sure what the distribution plan is on this yet. And once I find out, I'm certainly gonna, let you know. I know I'm planning on doing an interview with Kevin for FilmBuff Online, my website, because I interviewed him back in 2017 for a local newspaper when he started the project. So I kind of want to bookend that for him.
You want to finish the story.
Yeah,
that's amazing. And like I said, congratulations. I'm happy it went well. I'm happy your friend got to make this movie. I'm happy you were able to go to the premiere and
this one. I've skipped a lot of stuff that happens on Mondays. Like, well, hell, tonight was the Civil War screening, and so it's like, nope, I can't miss 2 weeks in a row, and that's why I'm here, obviously, for my commitment to you and to the show and the audience. But this was one of those ones where I was like, I gotta be here.
Bad now. So bad. You could have saw the movie that everybody's gonna be talking about in like 3 days.
I don't know. I feel this movie's gonna give me agita while watching it. Honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the Civil War movie is very much like too close to home, too soon.
Maybe.
I don't know. They have California and Texas working together. I don't know. I don't know that they could ever happen. Anyway, we'll see. I'll see. I'd like the explanation. Where can people find you online, my friend?
They can find all of my writing at FilmBuffOnline.com. I do 2 other podcasts. One is the Big Picture Podcast, which I mentioned earlier, with my wonderful best friend and co-host, Natasha Bogutsky. You can find that at BigPicturePod.com or on the link at FilmBuffOnline.com. The other podcast I do is with the Philadelphia Film Critics Circle, which I am a member of. It's called The Film Scribes. You can find that on most podcatchers just with a quick search. On the socials, I am at FilmBuffRich on both Twitter and Blue Sky. And our FilmBuff Online has a Facebook page. And I suggest, finding that, liking it. You'll get a notification when all new articles and reviews go up on FilmBuff Online through the Facebook page, plus some additional content such as some quick little breaking news blurbs or this date in history posts, things like that, that will also show up there and there only. So search it all out, like, subscribe, do whatever you need to do depending on the social media app, and we'll see you all there.
Okay. For me, let's see. That was you were very breathy.
I think a lot more compactly than I normally ramble through. So
it was good. If you like what you see, YouTube channel, youtube.com, the Indie Escape Network. Find us there. Like us, subscribe us. It means the world if you do it. We appreciate you. It helps us out. If you don't like YouTube, though, and you want to go to the Facebook page, also helps immensely. Where we have things about different things coming up. We celebrated Kane Hodder's birthday, friend of the network, of course, played Jason very famously. All those things. You can also find my stuff, JW the Movie Guy, on Facebook, on Twitter. I don't have TikTok. I do. I have Twitter or whatever the fuck crazy pants is calling it this week. Instagram, JW the Movie Guy, JW the Movie Guy. Threads, Blue Sky, anywhere you want to look for me, it's JW the Movie Guy. That's the easy way to go. We will see and also, I should say, on Tuesday nights, we do a little show called Loud and Nerdy, which is one of the flagship shows on the network. We're super proud to be part of the Indie Escape Network. We'll be there tomorrow night. Also, if you have any creative and have a new indie movie trailer and or commercial, email to us, play an upcoming Indie Escape Network show for free just by sending it to the.indie.escape@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us tonight. Bond is back, baby.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we'll see everybody next week for this. No, not Goldfinger. Shit. For the Spy Who Loved Me.
Yes.
Great car, great henchman, great girl, good
Mm,
plot. One of the best Roger Moore Bonds, actually.
yeah.
And we'll see
I'm
everybody
not a
next
big
week.
Roger Moore fan, but this is one
It's
of
one.
the ones that stick out for me.
It,
So
it's one of his. It's one of his best. There's a lot going
yes.
on. Fun. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see everybody next week, and I'll see everybody tomorrow night on Loud and Nerdy with Kevin, with Kyle Defina and Kevin, with Kyle Defina and Jerry Kimura. Thanks for joining us
Mm.
tonight. Have a great week. We'll see everybody soon. Bye.
Ah.